Hello there, welcome to the channel, where today we're going to be doing a full deep dive into the next Godzilla game that's finally been announced, Destroy All Monsters, Melee, Remastered. Not only does this title just roll off the tongue with no need to write around it, it also comes with our first look in the form of a minute-long trailer. So today, we're going to be taking a look at part of Toho's $105 million investment by breaking down this teaser shot by shot, covering all information currently available, explaining the changes, additions, and improvements this game has compared to the original, as well as making a fool of myself with even more predictions, cause those always end up working out. Some of the script was written while I wasn't in a situation to do much research on the original Pipeworks trilogy, and I've never had the chance to play any mainline Godzilla game before. So apologies in advance if I make a big deal out of things already present in the series. Oh, and while I was working on this video, an exclusive interview with one of the developers came out, giving us a bunch of new information, so I had to go back and add a bunch more facts in. With all that out of the way, let's get into this. Enjoy! For those of you who don't know, in the 2000s, Pipeworks and Atari partnered up to deliver a trilogy of Godzilla video games, with the first one being Destroy All Monsters Melee. There was also an infamously expensive Godzilla game made to tie in with the 2014 movie, which ended up being removed from all digital storefronts due to rights issues. But that was 12 years ago. Since then, the only major Godzilla game was his appearance in a DLC for Super Monkey Ball, but I've been playing that and a less interesting game, Giga Bash, for the last 2 years. So by about 8 months ago, I was getting pretty antsy for the next game. Thankfully, Toho put a whopping $100 million into expanding Godzilla's brand, and just 2 weeks ago they announced a remaster of Destroy All Monsters Melee. Shocking, I know, but you heard it here first. With all that context, let's start with the very first part of the trailer. The opening shots seem to be in-game cutscenes, either establishing the characters before each match, akin to most fighting games, or from a campaign, which we'll get into later. This Godzilla also resembles the Heisei design, aka the de facto Godzilla in his less specific appearances, which tells us that this is indeed a remaster, not a remake. The original's main Godzilla was Godzilla 2000, and while it did have a Heisei Goji, you had to unlock him later on. It seems that for this remaster, Heisei is being given the spotlight, proving that some aspects of the game will differ to make it more modern. On that note, the graphics. They look fantastic, with Tokyo having this gorgeous early summer evening vibe, and the setting seems to be the same area from the Black Angel scene in Shin Godzilla. Yes, my knowledge on geographical locations heavily relies on how many Godzilla movies they've appeared in, very sad indeed. There's also cars on the roads, and the buildings seem much more realistic, though I am admittedly a bit scared of this fog. It shows up in quite a lot of the city maps, but in this particular area it seems to be the map border, which if so, is far smaller than I'd like. Thankfully, there are both gameplay and cinematic shots of certain maps that showcase the fog moving with the camera, but I'm not sure if that's been changed or if they had replay tools to capture more cinematic footage. The next shot is not of the game itself, but of the developers behind it, with both Atari and Pipeworks returning, which is a really good sign. The fact that Toho didn't outsource this game and brought the original creators back after nearly a quarter century says a lot about how much care will be put into this game. Famous last words. At the very least, the feel of the original should be present. We then get a short showcase of the throwing ability, which was a major gimmick in the first game, with Goji picking up Ghidorah and chucking him across the city, before sending a building his way. The trailer shows a building being destroyed later on, but in this particular scene, Ghidorah clips through a house, and the shot cuts before we can see the chucked building break apart. From the looks of it, it just clips through him again. Thankfully, this is all only visible when you really slow down the gameplay, and shouldn't be too much of an issue in the full release, which is an entire 6 months away. It's highly likely that the camera will be able to rotate a full 360 degrees, judging by the way it moves after a single throw, and later shots then making it spin even more. This was one of the best parts of the original, as it helps keep the maps fresh. We can also see a helicopter flying in the background, confirming the military will be active in normal matches, which was reinforced by the interview. Godzilla also doesn't immediately destroy these buildings when he walks, which again, might be to hide the destruction for later on. The next map is quickly showcased, that being glorious, glorious London, with the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben in the background, as well as the River Thames taking up a large portion of the arena. We get 3 quick cuts showing a tail swipe, the river changing the elevation slightly so that the water is at knee height, and Goji charging headfirst at Ghidorah, who appears to block the attack with an electric shield, sending the big Jeep backwards. Next to Big Ben, there also seems to be an electric power-up, which you got in the original by destroying buildings. There's also a train station in the foreground, with an elevated platform and track, but none of the carriages themselves are moving, possibly due to them being partially damaged, which is indicated by this smoke plume. After a quick text block, we get a bunch of quick glances at some of the various maps, with the first one being the iconic Monster Island. In the original, that was basically a dirt pit, but besides the major graphical improvements, we can spot the addition of some grey metal buildings. These were present in the original, and if I had to guess, they're meant to represent the outpost from the movie Destroy All Monsters. If this game features stage hazards, it's possible that these could emit yellow sleeping gas like in that film, or this map could contain Kumonga, or even Fire Dragon, don't ask. This is also why I think the fog will move sometimes, as in this shot, we can see a T-shaped tower on this terrain formation, and to the left of it, a square metal object that might be another building or an entrance to a harbour. Take a note of how the fog is nearly covering that second object. In a later portion of the teaser, both kaiju are closer to it, with the T-tower being here and the harbour being here, and as you can tell, the fog is further away. Here's a direct comparison. The reason why I'm obsessing over this fog is because in the Tokyo section earlier, the camera moved closer to it, but it didn't recede, which indicates that this might be how the map border works. In two other kaiju games on the market right now, Excedio and Gigabash, a transparent purple wall comes into view whenever you get too close to the map edges, which can break immersion sometimes. In the original Destroy All Monsters, this border was bright green, so I'm kinda hoping that they replaced it with this wall of fog. It would also make a lot of sense for the map to end here, just before these tall buildings, if they don't automatically get destroyed like in Excedio. The next map is almost definitively Seattle, as it contains the iconic Space Needle, and it's our first look at a map set at night. According to the Steam page, this game will have 8 locations, each with day and night variations, as well as a version with a thicker fog, which we can see if we briefly skip past a shot. We're again at London, but this time it's nice and miserable, with deep greens and a closer fog. As a British person who loves waking up to my render distance being set to -12, I can't wait to play on this map. The fog is also receded back again, meaning that we'll most likely be able to visit Parliament. Going back to the map showcase we skipped, it appears to be an industrial area at a dock, with large factories and cargo containers. And it's probably Osaka. In the original game, that city had maps mainly based around the docks and industrial areas, so it's highly likely that this is that one. Either way, these docks are an iconic Godzilla location, and the way Godzilla is walking towards the camera gives another hint that it can fully rotate. The next shot showcases the new destruction mechanics, with the area initially being covered in a large dust cloud, before Godzilla knocks the building out of Ghidorah's heads, and it breaks apart when it touches the ground. This map seems to be San Francisco, with wide roads, large intersections, and a helicopter firing at Godzilla. In the interview, they mentioned that the military will also be a major hazard in the stages, so that's pretty nice. From the looks of it, buildings only completely break apart when they get put under certain conditions, such as falling from a grab, as the later destruction in the trailer looks rather different. And now, for the biggest reveal of the trailer, and what I think will be the best addition to this remaster overall. Destroy All Monsters Melee Remastered is officially confirmed to support online play. We don't know all the details, but this is groundbreaking. Yes, the 2014 Godzilla game featured online play, but that was the 2014 Godzilla game, so not a lot of people were able to even play it. And that game also cut out local play. Speaking of, local play will also be returning in this one, and it'll even support Steam Remote Play, so only one person needs to make a purchase. Now, the original game and its two successors didn't have online features, so let's assume it will be similar to the 2014 Godzilla game with a few much needed changes. Quick rundown on how that online play worked. There were 3 different matches to choose from: 1v1 with anyone, 1v1 with friends, and a 3-player free-for-all. However, there was a major flaw, that being the progression. You had to unlock characters, and as you played as them, you unlocked their moveset, and they got better and better, with more health, energy, the works. Unfortunately for any newer players, this also translated to online play, and with such a small player base, even before it became an expensive collector's item, it was extremely unlikely to get matches with anyone but veterans, who had an undeniable advantage. At least that's what I think it is. I may like Godzilla, but not enough to justify £900 for a video game. Wait, free shipping? So hopefully this new remaster will have a mode that evens the power levels of all players, even if that progression system is kept in the game. On that note of progression, you might have noticed I've been sprinkling in external details during this video, such as context on older games or info from the Steam page, which should help this breakdown cover most bases. But one of the most interesting things in that storefront is the mention of unlocks. Unfortunately, I don't think that there'll be alternate skins like some people have assumed after the trailer's final reveal, which we'll get to soon, as skins aren't mentioned anywhere. but instead, gallery items are going to return. Most likely, this will contain old Godzilla trivia and memorabilia, such as concept art, or guides from the original Pipeworks trilogy, with the interesting part being the way we unlock them. It's stated numerous times we'll be able to choose the order of characters, gallery items, and maps we unlock. So for online play, I'm pretty confident that all maps will be able to select, but you can only play as characters you've unlocked, like in the 2014 Godzilla game. I'm also interested in if the freeway battles will return, and if there'll be a ranked mode or something. I mean, a King of the Monsters high scoreboard of victories would be really cool. As for local play, I rather hope they keep the 2v2, 1v1, and 4-player free-for-all. We get that closer shot of Monster Island I mentioned earlier, and Ghidorah performs the first 2 hits of a combo, which most likely ends with him using his final head to attack before pushing all 3 forward. These 2 Monster Island shots also contain the largest difference in rotation by far, with the camera taking nearly a 90-degree turn. Then, it's revealed that Destruction Mode will be returning, with single player most likely being accessible without cheat codes. And the way the buildings are damaged in this game looks incredible. We saw one fully crumble, but to give a comparison to 2 other games, here's how the average building is destroyed in Excedio. Here's how the average building is destroyed in Gigabash. Well, in this remaster, buildings get damaged based on where you hit them, and slowly collapse in on themselves. This was also present in the original, but due to technical limitations, it wasn't nearly as realistic. You can see these impacts from where Godzilla's tail and left fist struck this building before the shot started, tiny pieces of rubble breaking off the building when Goji attacks it, as well as when his tail slams into this building, with the best showcase being when you really slow down the footage. As Godzilla's tail once again ruins somebody's day, you can just barely see the building get destroyed exactly where it made contact. In fact, an earlier shot showed us a claw swipe on the side of a building, and the interview makes a big point that this game is mainly a graphical overhaul. This map also appears to be Los Angeles due to the sheer amount of palm trees. And with that, we've seen all the maps except the alien mothership, as this game is only going to feature 8. Hopefully, we'll be able to play on specific districts like in the 2002 game, but the giant boxing ring and alien homeworld have apparently been cut, which is a bit of a shame. They could maybe include them in a DLC, but who knows. The next couple shots don't have that much substance, besides seeing the atomic breath. The building behind Ghidorah having that same specific impact crater that implies rather realistic destruction in this one. And these projectiles hitting Godzilla's torso seem to confirm the military returning in destruction mode. And now, for the final reveal of the trailer, MechaGodzilla is going to be returning, but not in the way most would have expected. Before we get into that, let's talk about the map in the background. I was 50-50 on it being either the UK or Japan due to the elevated train tracks, the wide road behind Mecha, and the Ferris wheel on the horizon that could have been the London Eye. But these cherry blossoms almost certainly confirm that it's Japan. Considering how far away the fog is, yes okay, I'll stop talking about it now, I swear.
Hello, I am Mr. Beast. The fog is coming. The fog is coming. The fog is coming.
It seems extremely likely they will be able to destroy these elevated roads. So about the Big Microwave himself, he is perfect. Easily the best part of the entire game so far. The detail is beyond extraordinary. Just look at his plating, let alone the way his torso and hands move. We can even tell that he's the rebuilt version, as the MechaGodzilla 2 label is on his arm here. Showa Mecha is perfect for a fighting game, because he easily has the most gadgets and gizmos aplenty out of all the mecha versions. Yes, most of them have so many missiles and lasers that you'd think Acme was sponsoring them, but in the final battle of this version's debut film, he kept coming out with more and more absurdly aggressive aerial attacks, to the point where he was using a new weapon every 30 seconds. Can't wait to see how many of them make an appearance, as they perfectly skim the line of awesome and campy. I mean, he has rainbow laser eyes and can turn his head fast enough to create a force field. Absolutely incredible. But those aspects of his character, while exciting to look forward to, are the main reason why I don't think that we'll be getting alternate skins, besides it not being mentioned anywhere on the store page. Each incarnation of Mecha is fundamentally different from the others. Rather ironically, I believe that he's the single co-star that alternative skins would fit the least with. Showa Mecha didn't appear in the original, so when people saw him in the trailer, they hoped that it was confirmation of alternate versions of characters. That would work with Godzilla, Ghidorah, pretty much all the favourites. But Mecha? Even in the original they kept Kiryu and Heisei as separate characters. And yes, you could have made those versions fit together with a little bit of effort, but Showa is just completely different. So, why then? Well, as I mentioned earlier, $100 million. I prefer games with more quality over quantity, but part of me thinks that Toho is banking on this being the definitive Godzilla game, especially considering that this probably isn't the only one they're cooking up. So, to appeal to as many people as possible and to keep it as relevant and timeless as they can, they're going with sort of the definitive versions of these characters. Remember, Heisei wasn't the focus in the original despite being incredibly popular at the time. And while some could, and inevitably will, argue that Showa isn't the main version of Mecha, you can't disagree that he fits with this game's campy tokusatsu tone the best. There's also another theory going around online that is probably also the case, with the interview seeming to confirm it. So we now know some of the characters that are returning, with one of those being Kiryu. They then make it clear that the mechas are two different characters, not skins, and not only are they mentioned separately, but the interview holds some much needed context. So they first say that you've got everyone here, before they go through the list, and they then play a match. This leads me to believe that the interviewer was on the character selection screen, reading each completed one as they appeared. Kiryu and MechaGodzilla aren't mentioned together, or even that quickly after each other, so they probably have different icons, meaning that their differences are substantial enough to justify their separation. So the theory itself goes that Showa Mecha is replacing the Heisei version for consistency's sake. As the story mode in the original game ended with the aliens using their ultimate weapon, MechaGodzilla 2. Not that 2. Or that one too. Heisei Mecha was built by the military, whereas Showa was built by aliens, so it'd make more sense for Showa to be the final boss. On top of that, both mechas in the original used finger missiles, something only Showa could do, and the interview mentions different incarnations of characters, and how there are certain things that they wouldn't notice but Toho and the fans would, while talking about the new mecha. Case closed. In case you can't tell, we've now transitioned from the trailer breakdown into the full overview of everything we know about the game, so let's talk about this roster. The original game includes Heisei Godzilla, Godzilla 2000, King Ghidorah, Heisei MechaGodzilla, Angrius, Rodan, Gigan, Destroyer, Mecha King Ghidorah, Orga, Megalon, and in certain versions, Kiryu. That's 12 in total, and thanks to the new interview, we now know of 8 characters, with only 4 being up in the air. The ones undeniably confirmed are Godzilla, hot take I know, Ghidorah, Rodan, Orga, Destroyer, Kiryu, Showa MechaGodzilla, and Mecha King Ghidorah. That's 8 so far, and we know the roster for this game will be 12 like in the original, so let's talk about who's not here. Firstly, and most importantly, Angrius. If they cut my boy from the game, I'm going to crash out. They always do him so dirty. I am leaning on the side of him returning, alongside Megalon and Gigan. I just don't think that they were ready by the time this interview happened. And we already know that Heisei Mecha has been sent to the Butterfly Farm, so that leaves one more. Godzilla 2000. I'd be genuinely surprised to see this guy return, but it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility, as this game looks to be a rather faithful remaster. They do mention how different versions of Godzilla have different dorsal plates, so it's not entirely out of the question for them to bring back 2000 for nostalgia, but my money's on them replacing him. To keep with the theme of including the traditional Godzilla and the modern version, I'd say they'd replace 2000 with -1. Okay, not really. I mean, that's what I'd like, but that's my horrific bias speaking for me. Instead, Mothra seems like a safe bet. She appeared as a stage hazard in the original alongside Ghidorah, but only became a part of the roster in Destroy Monsters sequel, which is absurd considering how popular she is. Granted, they did have her in both her larval and imago forms, but still, I'll be beyond shocked if she isn't in this game as a playable character, replacing either 2000 or one of the mechas.
It was a different MechaGodzilla, so that is the one character change that we made is updating that MechaGodzilla. That is the one character change.
Before we go into what might be the biggest gameplay change, keyword might, let's quickly diverge with something that's not in any of the promotional material, but a feature I desperately hope returns. I'm talking about Destroy Monsters Melee's cheat codes, as there are quite a lot of them. This adds so much customization and accessibility to the game, as well as just being a cool Easter egg to mess around with. I'm assuming that if they did return, the unlocking ones that give you everything would be removed, but stuff like changing the size, strength, and power of specific players would be very useful in keeping the matches balanced. The colour filters, hazard removals, and showing the game version and total time to complete it on screen would be fantastic. Not to mention the credits. Why did they need a cheat code for this? For an already great game, cheat codes are just the icing on the cake, and it's been far too long since a modern one has included them. While the greatest overall feature is undoubtedly being able to connect worldwide with unemployed tryhards who've got nothing better to do. Like myself. The biggest gameplay addition could end up being the new campaigns. Yes, plural, as according to the Steam page, each monster will have their own story mode. Well, not really. As far as we know, just stick with me here. The store mentions a list of returning and revamped features, with the final one being quote, also includes additional single-player campaigns for each kaiju. The tricky part about this is that the original also had an arcade-style mode, but it was the same for every character except Mecha. He was the final boss, so his final boss was Mecha King Ghidorah. The story of these gauntlets was roughly the same. An alien race takes over the minds of every monster.
Attention, inhabitants of the planet you call Earth. We are the Vortac, alien invaders from a distant galaxy. We have come to seize control of your planet and plunder its resources for our own purposes. It's what we do. We have seized control of your Monster Island facility and have unleashed all monsters under our mind control rays. That is all. Am I still on?
One of them, the player, breaks free and fights the rest to save them, before the aliens beam them up to the mothership and use their ultimate weapon, MechaGodzilla. So the question is, will we be getting the same story for every monster, or a unique version per kaiju? This, as most things on the internet, all devolves into examining wordplay and corporate lingo. The list describes the several level marathons as a campaign, not adventure mode like the original, and uses the words, also, additional, which implies that it's original without confirming it. However, they never say anything about each kaiju's version being unique, and campaign might just be because every game nowadays uses that description. Then again, what immediately struck me after seeing the teaser for the first couple times was that Mecha was probably part of a cutscene, as the camera movement, animations, framing, and detail is far better than the opening shots of Godzilla and Ghidorah. I assumed that Mecha's appearance was taken from a story mode before I learned that he was the final boss of the original, so it'd make perfect sense for him to have a custom cutscene. But this area is in Tokyo, not the mothership. However, the mothership doesn't appear anywhere else in the trailer, either to avoid spoilers or because it simply hasn't been finished yet. This whole situation is very annoying because there's no way to prove or deny what style of story mode we're getting until more info comes out. But I thought I'd mention the cases for both sides so you can come to a temporary solution. Even worse news, this is the only part of the video I wasn't sure about, and the interview does not help. They talk about it, but only describe the original, avoiding the question we're discussing here entirely.
So, in addition to the multiplayer game where you're just in an arena fighting, there's this adventure mode where, as you play through, you are leveling up your different kaiju. So you'll start with these four that you have access to, and then as you play through, there's a little bit of a narrative as you play like kaiju fight to kaiju fight. Mm-hmm. So again, like even though that most people will play this game as a multiplayer title, there were a number of different single player modes. So there's like a destruction mode where you're just trying to destroy all the buildings. There's a survival mode where you can just fight waves of additional kaiju. So like I was saying, the game is...
You may have also noticed, the dev said a direct mention of the survival mode, which makes me think that survival will be returning alongside story and destruction. Why else would they go out of their way to talk about a feature that wasn't even brought up? Almost like it's been on their mind recently. Okay, now let's focus on just the interview to wrap things up. During it seems like they might have been playing the sequel, Save the Earth, not the remaster. Several people in the comments pointed this out, but as I've not played these games before, I can't say for sure. Except, they literally mentioned that this is an alpha build, so it just sounds a bit different.
And so we're going to look at an alpha build of the game and give it a whirl, see if it's like you remember.
Godzilla rolls, and then the dev says that the other player got frozen by a tank, which was a feature in the first game, or at the very least part of a cutscene, and in the background you can hear the announcer, confirming their return. We can also hear Rodan at one point. By the way the dev is talking about the gameplay, it seems to be one-on-one with the original, with most new updates being focused on the graphics, which actually makes a lot of sense. The maps are also going to be slightly bigger. If I had to guess, this is due to the border being a circle, not a square, so we get some more space at the edges. We can kind of see the circle shape if we assume that the fog is the border, mainly in the opening scene and the destruction mode part, as it curves ever so slightly. Oh, the remaster is also releasing on PS4, which is good news for owners of that console. That means that we might get this game on Xbox One and even Switch. I'd personally keep my expectations low, as this might just be to have an actual Godzilla game on the PS4, but hey, you can hope, right? But anyways, that's it for this video. Apologies for not making the Gigabash video that won the recent poll. This is kinda why I'm not mentioning my next video in the outro anymore. I want to give that concept the time it deserves, and I felt way more inspired to make this one instead. Besides the Mothra thing, there's only one detail which I noticed that I haven't mentioned, and that's the way these buildings light up when Ghidorah goes near them. You can see a faint red outline if you really slow down and really zoom in. so I think this is the game's way of prompting the player to try picking up the buildings, or letting them know when they're close enough to do so. This is my longest video yet, and it took the editing equivalent of 2 combined, as you've probably noticed. But despite many hurdles I won't get into, I wrote and edited this video in just over 2 weeks. This isn't a realistic expectation of the channel's output. I really want to prioritise quality over quantity, like I have done in my recent uploads, including this one. So just know that when these videos take forever, I'm not procrastinating. These genuinely take me dozens and dozens of hours each time, and they're only getting longer. If you're still listening, please let me know. I'm interested if anyone does want to keep up to date with the channel and my upload schedule. And I also have a LARP channel now. Yeah, really. I'm 90% sure it's someone I know trolling me, and they keep leaving really rubbish comments on my videos, but I'm half excited, half terrified for their first video, if they do make one. Oh, we also hit 500 subs. But I won't be making a special video for that milestone because it doesn't feel earned in the slightest. But that's a story for another time. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all later.